this video, we'll be going carboxylic acids nomenclature and reactions, as well as ester reactions and ester nomenclature. The carboxylic acid functional group looks like this. When naming, remember that COOH, written out like this, is the same as this. For the sake of time, we will be skipping common names, as those are fairly easy to memorize. We'll be going through the IUPAC nomenclature. So for example, if we have CH3, CH2, CH2, COOH, this is your carboxylic. It has to have the lowest number, so it's on carbon number 1. There are 4 carbons, so we call this butanoic acid. But, all single bonds, and then the ending for a carboxylic acid, oic acid. So butanoic acid. Now, carboxylic acids are the highest functional groups. So, another question would be, instead of this molecule that we just named, what if we had CH3, CHOH, CH2, COOH. The carboxylic acid would still have the number 1 priority, but we have this alcohol group on carbon number 2. So, when this alcohol has a lower priority, or in other words, is not the highest priority, we call it hydroxy. So this molecule would then be called, this is actually carbon number 3. This would be called 3-hydroxybutanoic acid. In the last video, the table of oxidation and reduction, we already went through reactions with carboxylic acids and aldehydes and alcohols and how they're all related. So, the reactions that we'll go through now are the carboxylic acid reactions with alcohols to form esters. So, when a carboxylic acid group reacts with an alcohol, water is lost. So what we can envision here is that this H and this OH are combined and water is formed. When that water is removed, this oxygen is directly connected to this R group to form the ester, giving us our final answer of COO, and then whatever the R group is. In this case, the R group is our CH3. When we have this COOR group, that is our ester, made from our carboxylic acid and our alcohol. Now, instead of an alcohol, instead of methanol, like we previously used, what if we used a salt? So for example, what if we used potassium hydroxide? Here's how that reaction would occur. We still have our carboxylic acid group, except now this is an ionic bond. So really what we have is K plus and OH minus. In the same sense as before, the products of these two reactions would be a carboxylic acid, salt, and water. So remember, we still have this H and this OH forming water, except now this O minus ionically binds to this K plus. So our final answer would be O minus, K plus water that's made in solution. That is what we call a neutralization reaction. A neutralization reaction uses an acid plus a base, giving you a salt and water. Now let's dive into ester nomenclature and ester reactions. Ester nomenclature is fairly simple. Carboxylic acids end in oic acid. When you have an ester, we subtract the ic and add 8. So instead of oic, we have O8. So we subtract, in other words, the oic acid. So for example, if we were to name this structure CH3, CH2, COOCH3, how would we go about naming this? So remember, how are esters made? A carboxylic acid plus an alcohol gives us an ester. This reaction is important for understanding how esters are made. Let's see what groups we have. Attached to this molecule, we have an ethyl group and a methyl group attached. So, an ester has two parts, the first name and the last name of the ester. The name of this molecule is methyl propanoate. Propanoate. So what can we see here? When we divide up this molecule, there are two parts. There's the attachment plus the carbonyl group and the ester bond, and then there's the R group. This group comes from the alcohol. This group comes from the carboxylic acid. So when naming an ester, the last name of the ester attaches to the carboxylic acid prefix. So if this prop group, or 3 carbons, comes from the carboxylic acid, it is a propanoate. Now we just have to name the part that came from the alcohol, or the methyl group. This is how we get the name methyl propanoate. Now let's dive into ester reactions. We've already discussed the first way to prepare ester reactions from a carboxylic acid and water. So to prepare esters, you have a carboxylic acid plus an alcohol, and the final product would be your ester. There is a reaction of esters that you need to know. This is what we call hydrolysis. This name has two parts, hydro, meaning water, lysis, meaning to split. So, essentially, the reaction of the ester is to use water to break it apart. Now remember, when we added our carboxylic acid to our alcohol, we gave off water, in other words. So now, to go backwards, we're adding water to break apart this bond and to go backwards. So, to use the equation from above, if we start with an ester, right, and we use water and acid, so let's write H3O plus as our acid to break it up, we essentially take a water molecule, H and OH, and we split up the ester bond. Now remember, the ester bond is right here. So what we do is we add H to this side, OH to this side. What are our final products? You have your carboxylic acid, in this case benzoic acid, and then you have your alcohol. This is what we call hydrolysis. Now, this is acidic hydrolysis. Basic hydrolysis is slightly different, but maintains some of the same concepts. Basic hydrolysis would use something like sodium hydroxide. In that same light, the sodium will attach here, the hydroxide ion will attach here. Our final products would then be our carboxylic acid salt, and our alcohol. This is what's called the basic hydrolysis. In other words, saponification. In the next video, we will review more carbonyl compounds and reactions along with our amines and amides.